guys, so for today's video we are going to be discussing statistics and what I write on my scorecard to be able to keep the information that I need to know during and after my round so that I'm able to analyze my game and to keep progressing as I am able to then analyze what went wrong, what was good, and what I am able to improve on. So let's start off here. This is hole 1. I'm hitting a driver aiming over that bunker and I hit a good shot, so I am on the fairway. And after the tee shot, I had about a 66-yard shot to the green. So this actually was a little bit of an awkward distance for me, especially because the pin was in front, so there was not much room to leave it short. So my first goal here was obviously to make sure that it carried at least 66 yards. So also this fairway actually slopes a little bit to the right, so definitely did not notice that as much when I was hitting my second shot. And I leaked it a little bit to the right, probably because of the lie, and because I was wanting to make sure that I got it on the green, I actually gave it a little bit too much. So after that I had about a 24-footer. Definitely not the easiest putt to make for birdie, and I just left it low. I misread the line, but I gave it a good run for it. So it is going to be a little tapping par on the first hole. So for my scorecard statistics, I actually mark fairways by numbers. So number 1 means fairway hit, and after that I will write down the distance that I had and the club that I hit, whether or not I hit the green. And for my putts, I would write down how many putts and how far the putt was. So over here, what I would have then analyzed is my room for improvement, which would have definitely been the 58-degree wedge on this hole. I just like wedges in general for approach shots, so I definitely should have hit that closer. And I think I just was trying to be a little bit too safe for the first hole. But let's move on to the next hole.
Hey, really?
How far you shot just now?
170 yards.
I feel like very. What the hell? Go. It's the Parmesan chicken.
I'm having what you had last time. The Parmesan spaghetti.
Last night. Oh.
Gosh. Mama, you're fine.
Oh my god. Shot.
Shot.
What you guys see a hybrid?
Yeah. I play like 180.
But trust your shot.
Very confused now.
What
What
you
you guys?
have? What you have?
6 iron.
No, what distance?
162.
But I hit my 100.
Never mind lah, Michelle's already on the green. Why you guys sitting like so long? So I'm confused.
She's got a good lie.
Good shot.
For hole 2, I write 2 for the fairway because I hit a decent shot, but it ended up in a little bit of an iffy lie. And I wrote that there's no room for improvement, even though I hit my second shot pretty far from the pin, but that's because it was in an odd lie and I still hit it on the green and gave myself a putt for birdie, even though it was quite a far putt. And I made a 2-putt from 51 feet, which is pretty far, so I would consider that a good 2-putt. Hole 3 is a par 4, it is uphill and there is bunkers down the left side, so I'm just aiming towards the most right side of the left bunker next to the green. So almost exactly where I hit it there, and I hit it down the fairway, so good shot there. And then for my second shot, I had 148 yards. But as you can tell, I'm standing a little bit on a downhill lie, and this green is elevated. The pin is just left of those bunkers there, so I do need to make sure that I carry enough to carry those bunkers if I'm going for the pin, which is what I was planning to do. So I actually took one club more. I hit a 7-iron here, and I hit a really good shot, and I actually ended up going over the green. As you can tell here, I am in this rough. It's a little bit of an awkward lie, so I had to make sure that I was going to chip rather than putt. But because the rough there was a little bit floaty, I was afraid that if I would putt it, it would just kind of bounce off that rough, so I did decide to chip. And as you can see here, just giving it the practice and just seeing how my club is going to go through that grass. Trying to make sure that I get the right feel before I hit this shot. That is basically what I try to do. And just going for 58-degree wedge here. I actually hit a good chip. I thought it was going to be a good one. But even though it was downhill, it was not that quick. So for my putt, I had about this 4-footer left. It was a downhill putt and left to right putt. But because of my chip, I did not think that it was going to break that much. So I just took left inside, but it actually broke quite severely. So made a bogey here after missing that short putt. So for this hole, the thing that I would have to say is my fairway was definitely good. I mean, my driver was good. It hit the fairway. The second shot, I think, was the problem here because I could have definitely hit an 8-iron, and either way, even if I was short of the pin, I definitely had enough to carry that bunker. So I would have still been on the green putting uphill as opposed to giving myself that odd lie and odd chip. So definitely the room for improvement here was the second shot, but as well, the putt as well could have definitely been made. For hole 4, I tee off with a 3-wood, and I do make sure to make note of that on my scorecard as well. Just to know that if I do miss the fairway, what club I'm using, and to make sure that if it is a 3-wood and not a driver, that I have that taken down. So over here, I hit a pretty good 3-wood, but I actually hit it a little bit too far. So I ended up a little bit in the first cut of the rough here, but I don't know if you can tell, my ball's actually sitting a little bit down. So it was in a little bit of an odd lie, even though it looks pretty flat here and pretty much like fairway. So I was definitely trying to make sure that I caught good contact with the ball. And it was only 109 yards, so I'm hitting a pitching wedge here, and it is to a front pin. So I'm hitting the full pitching wedge, which carries 110, to make sure I get it all the way there. But I just pushed it a little bit. I think I was trying too hard to make sure that I caught the ball good and left the club face open, so ended up just on the right side of the green here. As you can see here, the lie here was actually a little bit odd. It was a little bit sandy, so my main goal here was to make sure that my contact was good, to ensure that I catch the ball first and not the ground, because then you give yourself a chance of hitting the back. And I actually caught good contact with it, but it just caught the apron and took a big bounce. So I ended up with about this 9-footer here for par. So definitely not as short of a putt as I would like, especially after having a short chip next to the green, and especially on a short hole. But still, this was the putt that I had, and I hit a good putt and saved the par. So for this hole, as I said, made note of the 3-wood on the tee shot, and actually the 3-wood was not a bad shot. It just ended up in a bad lie, so I would still write a 2, but then note that the bad shot here was the pitching wedge. And for the chip, I wouldn't say it was a bad shot because it was a good execution. It just did not turn out the way I wanted it to. So let's move on to hole 5. Hole 5 is a par 3. It is 171 yards. Today I am hitting a 6-iron here, but I actually pushed it again. So that was a pretty bad push over there. It pushed it enough to even go right of those bunkers. As usual, always just putting my club behind the ball to see what kind of lie I'm facing. And my lie was good enough that I knew that I was going to be able to hit a flop shot. So that is exactly what I'm doing here. Making sure that I have enough to carry that bunker, and it does go downhill from there, so I do not want to carry it too far. And the green does slope right to left from where I am as well. So as you can see, I land the ball pretty far right, but the slope does take it back towards the hole. So it was a pretty good chip from where I was. After that, I had about this 6-7 footer for par. So this was definitely a very important putt on this par 3. It is one of those good, decent lengths that you want to make but can't always make. So it always feels good to make one of these. And a good save there. So definitely the mistake here clearly was the 6 iron, which could have easily caused a bogey. Other than that, was happy with the chip and the putt. So the next hole is a par 5, and I am hitting driver off the tee. Nothing much here, pretty much just have to hit it right off those bunkers and get it out there as far as you can. And then for the second shot here, it is not reachable for me, so I just hit a hybrid. It is not very narrow, but it definitely does seem a lot more narrow than it is because there are a bunch of trees lining the hole. So you do want to make sure you have a good aim here. And my lie was actually a little bit downhill, so I definitely should have taken more consideration for that because I ended up just a little bit right off the fairway, which is okay, but it is still in the rough. I had 83 yards. I'm hitting a 58 degree wedge here because this green does slope a little bit downhill, and I do expect it to bounce a lot from this lie in the rough. So mainly the goal here was just to make sure that the distance was good, and as you can tell, took a huge divot there because the rough here definitely does kind of bite it. So the main goal here is definitely to make sure that my distance control was good with that shot, because this hole it is very easy for the ball to hit the green and still bounce all the way over because there's water covering the entire back side of the green. So over here, I actually was very confused with this putt. So as you can see, I actually recruited every single one of my friends to help me read the putt and see what they think. And you know, every now and then it does happen, like all of us actually saw the same thing. So from Diane's point of view, she saw left to right, which is exactly what I saw. But from my point of view, which is where my putt from behind my ball, I saw right to left. So Diane saw the exact same thing as me. And for here, actually, I am partners with Michelle. So she made a joke and said, "Are you sure you wanted to trust Diane right now when we are playing against her?" So she actually came along and helped me read the putt as well.
That's why I was like, no, from there it definitely looks left. From here it looks right. I think
But the grain is
I want to get on in this action.
I think my line. I think it's a little bit. You see what straight? Because I feel like this person. Oh, you think it's gonna break more? That's what like that.
No, it's just weird because from here.
Yeah, so I think not as much. See, right to left. Yeah, that's why I think
I didn't want to
the
say
left
it.
was too much.
I thought it was right lead.
Yeah, that's why from that angle it's right.
So for this hole, as you can see, I actually wrote that the hybrid was the issue because I definitely think I could have hit it closer with the 58 degree wedge. Especially on this green, you do need to hit the fairway to make sure that you give yourself the best chance to hit a shot that is actually going to spin on the green, rather than when you're in the rough, then it's kind of up in the air what kind of shot, what's going to happen to your shot, so you can't get it as accurate from the rough on this hole. Hole 7 is another par 3. It is pretty long. The pin is in front today, so you definitely want to carry the entire 160 yards that it is. And as you can see, there is water down the entire left side. I am hitting a 6 iron here, which is a good distance for this hole. So my plan was definitely to aim it a little bit right off the pin. If you can see, the pin is actually on the right side of the green as well. And I am definitely aiming right here with the plan of drawing. But sometimes the tendency is when there is water down the left, your ball does not want to draw. So I actually hit it straight to where I was aiming and ended up just on the right side of the green over here. But it's not too bad for this hole. This is a good miss, especially when the pin is over here. So for this chip, I'm just hitting a 58 degree wedge. Little, almost like a bump and run, but not that low of a bump and run because this is going to be a huge right to left breaker. So this was my chip with my 58 degree. And pretty much perfect. Gotta keep Michelle on her toes sometimes. So after that, made a birdie on this hole. So for this hole, would definitely say, I wouldn't say there's any room for improvement because honestly, the 6 iron was pretty good. It left me in a good position and obviously the chip was a great chip. So moving on to hole 8, which is a par 4. It is 393 meters, so it is a pretty long par 4. Definitely want to get it down there as far as you can. The bunkers on the right are not reachable, but those waters that do come a little bit into play the more right you hit it, and the wind was a little bit into us, so I'm just hitting a driver down the center, aiming for the left side of those right bunkers. So I got myself here. I'm actually just hitting a 7 iron to the pin. As you can see, you need at least 133 to carry those front bunkers, and it was 150 yards to the pin with a slight breeze into us. So that's why I'm hitting a little bit more club. And I hit that decently, but it just kicked left. As you can see, there is a slope to the left side of this green here, but it is not too bad. I can still putt from here. It is a big slope, that's why I decided to putt instead of chip, just to take a little bit of the variable out of play, and hit a pretty good putt here. Almost made it, and just another little tap in par, so we will definitely take that. So for this hole, I would really say that the 7 iron was a little bit left, but honestly it was not too bad and definitely an acceptable miss. So with the statistics and stuff, you can be as nitpicky as you would like, but you know, I would always say just be a little bit realistic, don't be too harsh on yourself. So hole 9, as you can see, I had to toss the little grass there to make sure, because on this hole, if the wind is into us, you definitely do not want to cut too far on the left side, because even though the right side, the fairway does become smaller, it becomes a little bit hard to carry those bunkers on the left side with the wind into us. So I was aiming a little bit down the right side and I hit a good shot there, but for my second shot, I still had a 5-wood because the pin was all the way behind. And as I mentioned on the tee box, it was into the wind, so you definitely needed more club. And I was actually standing a bit on an uphill slope, so my ball drew a little bit more than I wanted it to. But also this hole is just, I'm hitting a 5-wood into this green. As you can see, this green is not very easy. This pin is also not very accessible. So definitely it's not an easy hole, so I'm pacing it up here to see where I need to land the ball. My thought was basically I just needed to hit a little bit of a mid-trajectory chip with my 58 degree and let it land somewhere up on that slope there and let the slope take it down itself, because if I landed it on the down slope, I'm definitely going to fly over. So just hitting a 58 degree here and kind of landed it perfectly where I wanted it to, but it just did not roll out as much as I thought it was going to. So I ended up with about this 8-footer or 7-8-footer for par, and I thought it was going to be left to right considering the slope that I just chipped from, but it actually ended up going straight and actually broke a little bit left as well. So a little miss there, but as you can see, for me, I wrote that the 5-wood could have been better, but the lie was not great, and you know, the putt, it is what it is. You can't make all those putts all those times. So at the end of the day, this is basically what I wanted to show you guys with regards to what I do with my statistics, and then after that, how I analyze it and see what I would work on the range after the round. So for instance, after a round like today's, I can analyze my statistics and see that my driver and 3-wood were equally good today. They did not get me into any trouble. Green in regulations was not good because I only hit 4 out of 9 greens, and I pushed twice and did not get my 58 degree as close as I wanted it to. My putting was 13, but it also included one where I chipped in, so I had 0 putts. So my putting definitely could have been improved as well, but I did have some very good putts. So after today, I would have headed to the range, definitely hit some 7 irons, some 6 irons, and definitely some shorter ones like 58 degrees and pitching wedge as well.